Chapter 8, Paying the Price. Explanation. This is a story set in India long ago. It is about Allah Rakhi, whose job is to sweep the streets. She also takes care of an infant daughter while working hard for long hours. She thinks that she is treated unjustly because her pay is cut whenever she takes short breaks to rest. Let us read the story and see whether it is a happy or a sad ending. So the story begins like this. There was hardly a month when some part of Allah Rakhi's salary was not deducted as penalty. Sometimes she received just 3 or 4 rupees in all. She put up with all this but didn't want to cross swords with Khairat Ali Khan, the inspector of sanitization. Hundreds of sweeper women worked under his supervision. He didn't cut their pay, scold them, or fine them. He was a kind-hearted man with a good reputation. But Allah Rakhi always got a reprimand from him. She was not a shirker, nor clumsy, or supercilious. This story is actually about a lady whose name was Allah Rakhi. She worked as a sweepress who cleansed the roads, and she worked under the supervision of Khairat Ali Khan, who was the inspector in charge of all these women who cleaned the roads. But the problem here in this story was that even though Allah Rakhi worked very hard, even then her salary was deducted as penalty because time and again she took rest in the middle, which maybe was not important. The inspector in charge, Khairat Ali Khan, was a very kind-hearted, good, just person. He never cut salaries of other workers under him. But for Allah Rakhi, he would always cut money, and she would be left with very little amount of money at the end of the month. When the payday was there, she would get very little amount of money. She had a small infant daughter and a husband. Let's read on further. Even during the days when it was bitterly cold, she went out with her broom before it was daylight and swept the road vigorously until 9. But she couldn't avoid being fined all the same. Hosseini, her husband, helped her with the work when he could, but Allah Rakhi was fated to be penalized. For all others, payday was an occasion to smile. For Allah Rakhi, it was time to weep. On that day, she was always on tenterhooks. God knew how much would be deducted. Like students going to take the exams, she made mental calculations of how much was likely to be chopped off. That day she had got tired and sat down a moment to catch her breath. At that precise moment, the inspector appeared there riding his ikka. She pleaded as much as she could, saying, "Please, my lord, I am going back to work right away." But he just jotted down her name in his notebook without listening to her plea. Few days later, the same thing happened again. She had bought a paisa worth of candy from the sweet vendor and had just started eating it when the inspector dropped on her from nowhere, and her name again went down in red. No one knew where he could be hiding. The minute she began to rest for a moment, he would catch her. He had written her name down on only 2 days, but only God knows how much he would deduct as a penalty. Now what happened is that Alaraki would work very hard. She would get up early in the morning, and by 9 o'clock in the morning only, she would clean up the roads and everything. Whatever her charge was, she was in charge of the area. She would clean vigorously, with a lot of hard work. But even then, whenever the payday came, it was like she was very nervous, because there was certain amount would always be cut, because she was penalized for the rest that she took. For everyone else, payday, or the day when the pay would be given, was an occasion to be happy and be glad, because they were going to get their salary. But for Alaraki, it was a day to cry, because every time her pay would be cut. Why? Because one day she just sat down to rest for a little while, and the inspector came there and jotted down her name. Another day it happened so that she had bought some sweets from the sweet vendor, the candies from sweet vendor, and she just sat down to eat that. And again suddenly he appeared from somewhere, and the inspector again wrote her name down in red, marking as penalty that she would be fined. But even after 2 days, she did not really know how much would be deducted. She would calculate every time when she would be going to get her pay, that how much would be deducted. She never knew how much it would be. More than 8 annas? She hoped it wouldn't be a whole rupee. She went with her head bowed to collect her money, and always found that the amount deducted was more than what she had estimated. Taking her money with trembling hands, she'd go home, tears streaming down her face. There was no one to turn to who'd listen to her if she complained against the inspector. She would, every time whenever she would go to take the pay, whatever amount she had calculated that would be deducted, the pay would be still a little lesser, or the deduction amount would be more than what she would estimate or calculate. And she would be very unhappy, go crying home. And even at home there would be no one to listen to her. Who would be there? Her husband would be working already, and that little child, her infant daughter. So there was really no one to understand her, to listen to her tears, and see her and help her or be with her when she was crying, or to console her. Today was payday again. Her infant daughter had been suffering from cough and fever the past month. The cold and the little girl's cries kept her awake entire nights. On several days, she'd come to work late. The inspector had noted down her name. She would be lucky to come home with even half her pay this time. She picked up the baby, grabbed her broom, and went to the street. But the naughty child couldn't get down from her mother's lap. When her threats and coaxing didn't work, Alaraki set her down and started to sweep. The child was left howling. Now that day also, this particular day was also payday, and Alaraki's daughter, she was not well. She had cough and fever for a month, and she was crying away. So Alaraki picked up the daughter and took the broom and went to the streets to clean up, to sweep. And the baby was not leaving the mother, but after coaxing, getting out, like gently trying to calm her down, she put her on the ground and started to sweep. And the baby was crying away, howling away. But the poor little thing wouldn't sit at one place to cry her fill. She crawled behind her mother time and time again, pulled her sari, clinging to her leg, then wallowed on the ground, and a moment later got up to cry some more. "Shut up," said Alaraki, brandishing the broom. "If you don't, I'll strike you with the broom, and that'll be the end of you. That rude, evil inspector will appear any moment." Hardly had she got the words out of her mouth when Inspector Khairat Ali Khan got down from his bicycle and stood behind her. She lost her color. Her heart came into her mouth. "Ya Allah, I'm done for if he's heard me. What happened to my eyes that he's right in front of me and I didn't see him? Who knows that he'd come on his bicycle today? He always comes on his ikka." She stood transfixed, holding the broom in her hand. Now what happened? Alaraki took her daughter with her to the street to clean it up, and the daughter was crying away, getting after the mother, crying and caressing and holding her sari and pulling her leg and this and that. And Alaraki was very angry, and she she hit the broom on the ground and told her daughter, "You be quiet, otherwise if I hit you with the broom, that is the end of you. Because you don't know that evil man," that she said like that for the inspector. "He will come anyway." And actually he was there. And Alaraki was like as though she was like shocked to see him there. The inspector said gruffly, "Why do you bring this kid when you come to work? Why didn't you leave her at home?" Alaraki replied, "She's sick, my lord," said Alaraki timidly, very sheepishly, very cowardly. "There is no one at home to leave her with." And she was absolutely fearful and trembling and shocked and nervous and really didn't know what to do, holding the broom in her hand. The inspector was actually there in front of her, and this time he was on his cycle. And Alaraki was just thinking to herself, "What happened to me? Why didn't I see him? He always comes on the ikka, and today he's come on the bicycle and he's right behind me. And I hope he has not heard what I have said. What's the matter with her?" he asked. "She's been suffering from fever, Huzur." Huzur means sir. "And you're making her cry by leaving her alone. Don't you care if she lives or dies?" he scolded her. "How can I work if I carry her in my lap? Why don't you go home? Why don't you go on leave?" he said. "My pay will be cut, Huzur. How will we manage?" "Pick her up and go home. When Hussein returns from work, send him here to do the sweeping." The inspector, Khairat Ali Khan, he told Alaraki to take the sick daughter home, and when her husband Hosseini comes, he should come and complete the work, do the sweeping. Alaraki picked up the baby and was about to leave when he asked, "Why were you calling me names?" He asked her, "Why were you calling me bad things?" Alaraki felt her life going out of her. She felt as though everything is finished. She was in a blue funk. That means she was absolutely in big trouble, big problem. Trembling all over, she said, "No, my lord. Why may I go blind if I was calling you names?" And she burst into tears. She said, "Oh, may I become blind if I call you names?" She lied. And she started to cry. Burst into tears means she started to cry. In the evening, Hosseini and Allah Rakhi went to collect her pay. She was feeling low. Hosseini tried to console her, make her feel better. "Why are you so sad? If they are going to cut the pay, let them. I promise from now on I won't waste any money." Then Allah Rakhi said, "I'm afraid I'll be fined. What had happened to me? How could I?" Like she was talking that why did I speak such bad things? "If you are fined, then you are fined. Let Allah be merciful to him. How long can you go on crying about it? You are taking me there for nothing. Every one of those women will laugh at me." She was telling her husband, "If you are fined, won't we ask on what grounds? And are we not going to ask why is she being fined? On what basis? On what grounds means on what basis? And who heard you calling him names? Is it so easy for him to fire anyone he pleases?" She was very scared that she would be fired. She would be fired means she would lose her job. She would be thrown out of the job. So it is not easy that only he heard it. No, he's saying, Allah Rakhi's husband is saying that no one else heard you saying that, it was only he. What will he do? "If no one here listens, I will complain to the panchayat." He said, I will complain to the panchayat if no one here in the department of this cleaning department, if they don't hear, I will complain to the panchayat people. I'll beat my head to the headman's gate. If our people had such unity, would the inspector ever dare to fine so much? No matter how serious the ailment, there's always a remedy, silly. He tried to explain to her, console her that whatever the problem, there is always a solution to it. But Allah Rakhi's mind was not set at rest. She was not peaceful. Sorrow enveloped her face like a mist. Her face was full of sorrow. She could see sorrow and unhappiness and sadness on her face. Why didn't the inspector fire her on the spot? She was thinking. Why didn't he kick her out of the job or throw her out of the job? Meaning immediately. Why didn't he fire her immediately? She won't be able to fathom it. She was actually not being able to imagine it. He actually seemed kind. She couldn't understand this mystery. And one is scared of things one doesn't understand. We are more scared of those things which we don't understand. Which we know, which we understand, or which we know, the things we know. We still know that this is going to happen. But if we don't understand something, we feel more scared. If he wanted to fire her, he would have simply noted her name in his diary. He had decided to fire her. That's why he was so nice. She was thinking that he had decided to fire her or remove her from the job. That is why he was being good and did not note her name in the diary. They reached the municipal office. That is the government office. Thousands of sweeper women had gathered, wearing colorful dresses. Several vendors had also appeared, selling pan and other stuff. Many people had also come, women who had come to take the money. The mother sweeper women had come to take the money. They were well dressed because they were going to get money and it was time for occasion. And also pan vendors and all had also come to, because obviously when you get money you tend to buy some things also. A band of Pathans had also appeared there to extract money that they had lent to their debtors. A group of Pathans had also come to take the money from the people whom they had lent money. So these two also went and joined the queue, the line. That is Allah Rakhi and Hussaini, her husband. The pay began to be distributed. The sweeper women were the first to be paid. When a name was called, the person would take her money and shower blessings on the inspector, which he didn't deserve. Allah Rakhi's name was always called after Champa's. Today, she was passed over. That means her name was not called after Champa. After Champa, Jahuran was called, whose name always figured after Allah Rakhi. Allah Rakhi looked at Hussaini with despairing eyes, with sad eyes. The women were watching her and began to whisper, began to talk among each other. She felt like leaving the spot and going away to her home. She couldn't hear the humiliation. She was feeling so bad that they may be talking about her, talking bad things about her. So she she didn't want to bear that humiliation, that hurt. If the earth had given way, she'd have liked to go under. And that is an expression, that if the earth would have broken into pieces, she would prefer to go down and be under the earth. One after another, the names were called. Allah Rakhi fixed her gaze on the trees across the way. She was looking at the trees. She no longer cared whose name was being called, who was collecting pay, and who was staring or laughing at her. Like, she was so upset that now nothing made a difference to her. Whoever was looking to her, laughing at her, taking the pay, whose name was being called, nothing mattered. Suddenly, she heard her name and was startled and was taken aback or shocked. Slowly, she walked ahead with slow steps. Slowly she walked. The paymaster handed her the full amount of 6 rupees. That was her salary. The full money of the month. The person who was giving the pay, that is the inspector, gave her the full salary in her hand. She was stupefied. She was again suddenly surprised and shocked to see the full salary in her hand for once. The paymaster mustn't have made a mistake. Definitely she was thinking that I'm sure he's not made a mistake. She hadn't gotten her full pay even once in the last 3 years. Imagine, for 3 years she did not get her full pay, but this was the first time that she got her first full pay. And now she had been grateful if she was given even half her pay. She stood there for a second to see if the paymaster would ask for the money back. When he asked her why she was still standing there and not moving away, she said softly, "But it's the full amount." She was thinking that maybe the paymaster will ask for half the amount. And when he did not ask her, and he in fact asked her that why are you still standing? So she said that this is the full amount that you have given me. The paymaster looked at her puzzled. Now he was surprised, why is she behaving like this? I've given her the full pay, even then she's behaving like this. He said to her, "What else do you want? To be paid less? You want less pay? Was there no fine this time?" she asked him. No, there was no fine this time. Alarakhi moved away, but in her heart she was not content. She was not very happy. She was regretting that she had called him names, that even after calling him names, he did not cut her pay. That means the inspector was merciful. When he heard her story that the child was not well and there was no one to take care, he let her go back. He would only cut her money when she would rest. But on genuine reasons, he would not cut her money. And this was the first time that it happened. She got her full pay. So yes, this is a happy ending for the story.